Hey everyone! So like I mentioned before, I don't actually live in Yekaterinburg city, I live in Yekaterinburg region. And I guess that's quite unusual because most Westerners in Russia, I imagine, live in the big cities. But I kind of live in a small town, so I thought it might be interesting to share with you guys the experiences of life in provincial Russia. Focusing first on perhaps the difficulties and challenges of living in provincial Russia. Well, I mean, the first one is kind of the same whether you're in the city or in the town or a village, and it's the climate. Even though today is the 13th of May, it's still pretty cold. If you look around, everyone's still wrapped up. But really the climate is one of my favourite things about living in Russia. I mean, it is a special climate. One challenge, I guess, is if you're somebody that likes a social life. There's not that much happening socially in the smaller towns, it seems. In fact, you know, in my neighbourhood, they haven't got any cafes or pubs or anything like that. I don't mind that, actually. You save a lot of money. There's just not really the salaries here for people to have money to waste. It does seem a lot of people living in my town and other towns, you know, it's trying to keep their head above water most of the time. You've got all services on your doorstep, anything you might need in that building, a cosmetologist and a dentist, fitness centre there as well. And then that's a little library, a little pink building there. Behind that, a supermarket. Within a 2-minute walk from my home, I've got all the important stuff I need. I've got bus stops, I've got supermarkets, shops, dentists, fitness club, you name it. I have definitely noticed a slight lack of people in their 20s and 30s in this town in comparison to other age groups, and I guess that's because, you know, the young people, they are moving out of the small towns to the bigger cities to look for more opportunities. Now, of course, that doesn't just happen in Russia, that happens everywhere in the world. I think, you know, I'm going to have to do that soon, really, because although I like living in a small town, there aren't really any opportunities here. So I guess before long I'll go and try my luck in Moscow or St. Petersburg. In the warmer months, it's common to see people just sitting out on the benches and drinking. They're not supposed to drink in public. You wouldn't believe how many children's playgrounds there are in Russia. I mean, wow, you get them not just on every estate, but on every block. But the problem is, in the winter, no one plays on them because it's too cold to play out. And basically in the summer, they're just as popular with the drinkers as they are with the kids. In fact, a lot of the time the kids stay away because the drinkers are taking over. Alcohol certainly helps to get a lot of people through the day in provincial Russia. When I used to live in Moscow, you didn't really see people drinking a lot in public, or, you know, you didn't really see drunk people, not in the daytime or anything like that. People were too busy, you know, with their careers and other entertainments and things like that. But, you know, in the smaller towns, it is more noticeable, at least, more prevalent, percentage-wise, the people that are sort of, you know, drinking in the daytime and drinking related problems. But it's not a major issue, but it is something you notice more in small towns than the big cities, where people are more occupied, and also in a place like Moscow, you know, drunken behaviour is not tolerated as much. In the towns like here, no one really cares. And also, you know, the policing as well. You never see bobbies on the beats in Russia. Why don't you ever see police officers walking the streets in Russia? I think it's probably for two reasons. Firstly, again, because of the climate, right? It's not really a climate for walking around a lot of the time. And secondly, Russian towns and cities built up in the Soviet style are really spread out. You know, you've got these long streets. This street I'm walking on today is many, many kilometres long. So you should expect loads of vodka in Russia. I know it's a stereotype, but quite a true one. And also, like I just said, you know, it is the vodka that gets many people through the day. And, you know, you can get a bottle for 99 rubles there. So that's like a pound note. Obviously, it's not just vodka, any types of alcohol. Any will do. One good thing about living in the small towns is that you get very, very few of these electric scooters that are cropping up in huge numbers in the big cities. The transport situation in small towns in Russia is actually very good. You never have to wait more than a few minutes for a bus. These small type of buses here, they can get really crowded, especially during peak hours. So that's the newer type bus, the more comfortable type. Last year the town received about 20 brand new buses. Now for a small town, getting 20 new buses, that's quite a big deal. However, the problem is that although they got 20 new buses, they didn't have enough drivers to drive them. In the bigger cities like Yekaterinburg and all the others, you have tens of thousands of workers from the ex-Soviet republics, but in the smaller towns like here, they don't seem to come. Just about every shop you see, large or small, will have adverts looking for workers. If you're a cleaner looking for work, well then, wow, Russia really is the place for you, because every single day I see loads of job adverts for cleaners. The problem with the lack of migrant workers here, or the lack of people wanting to do those jobs, is that they don't get done. If they haven't got the staff to do it, then fine, but then don't charge us all money to do it. We pay a monthly amount to have the flat cleaned, and no one cleans it. So you see what I mean about the blocks? They are a bit grubby, a bit dirty. I mean, they do renovate them, but they soon get in a bad condition again. And like I say, these chutes can be a good idea because it saves you from keep taking rubbish outside all the time. But the downside is that it can make the area a bit smelly and dirty. Paying your council tax to have the communal areas cleaned and then not being cleaned is just one inconvenience. There's others as well. Most blocks in the city have got the domophone thing that you need to enter. You can't just enter, you've got to have the key fob. You might think if you live in a block you would automatically get or have the right to get one of the key fobs, but no, it doesn't seem to be the case. You have to pay a small amount, about 30 rubles a month, to have the right to enter your own flat, and a lot of people don't seem to be doing that. And in my flat, I seem to be one of the very few people that actually is paying the 30 rubles a month to get the key fob to be able to enter the home. Most other people just stand outside and wait for someone, usually me, to come in and out to get in. And then also as well, it's ridiculous, people have been people were trying to get in at like 10:30 at night into their own homes. They couldn't get into their homes, so they're ringing other people like me. So now we have to have our domophone switched off the whole time. All these micro-regions were built before loads of people had cars, because in the Soviet time it's hard to get a car. You had to go on a waiting list for 5 years and things like that, so car parks can be a bit of an issue. So basically people just having to park their cars anywhere. Another issue is the high bills, especially in the winter time, and the heating is actually still on. It goes off today. Funnily enough, the heating goes off today. If you wonder what I'm talking about, heating going on and off, well then, in Russia people don't control their own heating. It's controlled by the state, and the state decides when it goes on and when it goes off. And really, I think it should have been better to have turned it off like 2 months ago, and then people just wear a jumper in their home, because everyone's got a jumper, so just wear a jumper in your home and then save 2 months worth of heating bills, which incidentally a lot of people are struggling to pay. And I know that for a fact, because sometimes they have a list of people that aren't keeping up with their bills, I guess to name and shame people, to embarrass them into paying. And pretty much in my block I'm the only one that seems to be keeping up with my bill payments. So because of the low salaries and the quite high bills, I think a lot of people here, they are having a hand-to-mouth existence. But then again, that's not just in provincial Russia, is it? That's in many, many places in the world. So that are some of the challenges about living in provincial Russia, but let's now focus on some of the good things. And there's loads of good stuff about living in provincial Russia. There's loads I like about living in this little town. I mean, this town, Kamensk, is actually quite nice, quite prosperous by Russian small town standards. A great thing about particularly living in the Ural Siberia area is that, because of the space, you've got loads of green spaces, parks and boulevards, and also so many of the cities are actually completely surrounded by forest. In fact, a lot of the cities were built from scratch in a forest. Like I said earlier, the social scene in the small towns isn't that good really. There's not anything like mothers and baby groups and things like that. But listen, there are stuff to do if you want. Every small town will have its theatres and palaces of cultures, cinemas, nice libraries, places to play chess or table tennis. You can keep yourself occupied if you wish to. There's about 4 or 5 big swimming pools in the town. This one's pretty cool at the Palace of Sport. Still adorned with some Soviet era art, although they've painted it recently. That really cool mosaic I covered in a previous video, but it's so good it's worth seeing again, isn't it? And that's another good thing about these small towns, is they have preserved a lot of the cool stuff from the Soviet period, stuff from maybe the 60s or 70s that in bigger cities may have been knocked down to make way for newer buildings. So in a way, living in a smaller town is a bit more like feels like living in the USSR. Another good thing about living in a small town in Russia is that you don't really get any stuck up people or anything like that. You know, everyone's pretty much down to earth, and like the town itself, no one in these small towns speaks English or anything, so if your Russian's not very good you might struggle a little bit on that front. You see here a little random beach volleyball court in the middle of an estate. I've never seen anyone playing on it, but like I said, it's there for anyone who wishes to. Living in provincial Russia can often feel like living in a developing country. But the good thing about here is, unlike in other developing countries, you know, no one hassles you, no one bothers you. You can walk around freely. You know, you can't just walk around freely without being hassled in, you know, other parts of the world, Africa or Asia or South America. You know, and again, in some of those places, there's personal safety issues and other things like that. You know, in provincial Russia, you don't get any of that. No one troubles you, no one hassles you, and you know, crime rates seem low as well. Provincial Russia might feel a bit poor at times, but no one here is starving. You never get child beggars or anything like that. Look at that rather unusual old school swing there. Obviously bugs can be an issue in Siberia in the summer, so people come to the forests and parks and squares and spray stuff to stop the harmful bugs coming. I mentioned earlier that every little estate has its own children's play area, and they pretty much all seem to have their own kindergarten as well. Let's not forget that the Soviet Union, of course, was the worker state, and everybody was expected to work. So the children have to go in the nurseries at daytime to free up the mothers for the workforce. All young children have the right by law to go to kindergartens. Well, I mean, in theory. In practice, I think sometimes might be waiting lists and things like that. Quite a common sight in the smaller towns is the Russian Orthodox Church. You can see 3 there, one to the left nearer, and then in the distance a couple more as well. I think the small towns are the best place for these old looking churches. They just fit into the surroundings better. They look a bit out of place in the big cities. I mean, I'm saying old looking churches because in Russia most of these churches are actually new. Although the vast majority of people live in the big blocks, there's still plenty of people that live in the little wooden homes as well. So really, I think that living in a small town in Russia is absolutely perfect for you if you can entertain yourself and if you want a more calm, relaxed pace of life.